is that I was not born here in the colonies. I'm an immigrant. I immigrated from England. Yes, I was born an Englishman. Some people get afraid that I was born an Englishman, especially in this time and place. But many of us have strong connections here in the colonies with English people, even though we are fighting a whole war currently for our independence. Yes, I'm an immigrant. I immigrated here in 1774, so I've only been here for about 3 years in 1777, as the year dictates today. Now, when I know you're probably wondering, like, how can a man who's only been here 3 years be such a staunch supporter and actually call for American independence? What does he know about living here? Well, my ideas on government, my ideas about society and how the average citizen works in his government and his society, it did not start from merely moving here to the colonies. It started with my life in England, because contrary to popular belief, not every Englishman is in love with the crown. We fought a civil war only 100 years ago, in the Civil War, where they fought about how much power Parliament should have, how much power should the king have. So those ideas are freely flowing in England. Now, when I look back on my life in England, it does feel like that. It feels like an entirely different life from the life that I now live here in the colonies. Now, I was born in Thetford, Norfolk, England. I was born to an Anglican father and a paper mother. And I was raised in a very religious household. I received an adequate education, your basic reading, writing, arithmetic, but I did not stay in school for long because I became an apprentice under my father. My father was a business owner. He was a rope maker. He made ropes for sailing ships. So, a very profitable, busy trade, because English known for their navy and their fleet. A lot of ropes being ships. So I apprenticed under him until I was a young man, ready to start out on my own. So, once I was ready to leave, I quickly married the love of my life, Mary Lambert. We moved to the city of Margate, where I opened my own brokering business. And we were soon ready and expecting our first child. So I had this life that many of us worked very hard to attain, a successful business and a family. I had this life, and suddenly the greatest tragedy of my life occurred. The early onset of labor took from me not only the life of my child, but also my wife. So, very suddenly, this life I worked so hard for myself was gone. Gone, without anything I do. I could not do anything to stop it. And I was in a dark place, friends. I did not know what to do with myself. I could no longer live in Margate. I could not live with the memory of what I had lost. I could no longer run my business, so I shuttered it. And I did what every young Englishman would do when he was looking for a new purpose, or a new start in life. I moved to the city of London. Lots of opportunity in the town of London. I became a school teacher for a while, but then I was offered a position as a government servant. Actually working for the government. I was an officer of excise. An officer of excise is a tax collector of sorts. I deal with collecting taxes from ports, shipping businesses, and some smuggling operations that are illegal. But that was my job. They soon sent me away from London, and they sent me to this little town of Grampound in Cornwall. Now, I was a young man at this time, and I moved to a town near Grampound, the town of Grampound, and I saw the worst poverty, sickness that I have seen in my own life. I saw this town suffering with people not being taken care of. And it was very hard for me, as a tax collector, going to people that I know can barely pay these taxes, sometimes not demanding money from them. Taking money from them is like, this is a tax from you, and not seeing that money go back to that town. Clearly, the government was not working for the people of this town. They were not being protected. So that is where I started thinking about, what is government for? Why do we have government? Is the king and the monarchy that we've had for so many years, is that valid in today's world? Because at this time, life is changing for everyone. The merchant class gets higher, stronger and stronger, as the nobility, landowner class gets smaller and smaller. So how is that affecting our government, or how the way we govern our people? So I began to go to more lectures and learn more about government politics. They soon took me out of Grampound and sent me to another town called Lewes in Sussex. Now in Lewes, I was all of a sudden in an area of like-minded people. A lot of people in Luz questioned the validity of monarchy. How much power should the king have? It was the epicenter for the English Civil War that I said we fought 100 years ago. So that thought is still around. Well, how is the life changing? How should our government change while civilization and society is changing with it? And we also spoke a lot about personal engagement in your local community and your society as the greatest force. Since we have this strong merchant class, that is what is needed. The strong merchant class, the strong middle class should be present in their society and in their government. Those are the best people. The people that live amongst you are the best people to help you and protect your society. So that emboldened me to then join my local government and my society and help them thrive. I joined the court league, which is the governing body. I joined the church vestry, which helped collect donations to give donations to the poor. So I helped my society. I did all of this from a little apartment above a tobacco shop owned by Samuel Olive and his wife Esther. They introduced me to their daughter, Elizabeth. We courted for a while, and then we were soon wed. So there I am, with a new life, a new wife, and a new town, a new job. So I became emboldened. I gathered the rest of the officers of excise around me, and we petitioned Parliament for better working class conditions and better pay. And that led me to writing my first published article. Now, the title of the article was not very fancy. It was just called "The Case for the Officers of Excise." I know I would have to work on my titles in my future writings, not fair. But it was still popular. Many people still read it once it was published, and it made its rounds. But then, very soon after that article was published, I was let go from my position as a government servant. The reasoning they gave me was bureaucratic mumbling. I know it because of that article that I wrote. And then being out without an income, I fell back on a lot of debts, and I narrowly avoided debtor's prison. I'm very truly grateful for a lot of my friends that lived there in Luz because they helped pay off some of my debts, so I did not get thrown in prison. But unfortunately, that financial strain took a toll on my marriage, and then my wife formally separated from me. So there I am again. New wife gone, new job gone, new town gone, because I cannot stay there in Luz any longer. Because when you fall back on debts, you have a reputation, and it's very hard to find a room, board, find any type of loan, or get any occupation. So I moved back to London again to find some sort of new start. And I once again became a school teacher to have some sort of income. But I tried to invest in my own person. I started going to as many lectures as I can. I went to lectures, if you're not familiar, it's exactly what is going on right here. Someone with a viewpoint coming and expressing his ideas and the free flowing of knowledge between people. Now, I went to lectures that involved political sciences, physical sciences, literature, architecture, anything that I could learn, because I knew that the more I learned, the more avenues are opened up to me to find a new purpose. But through those lectures, I did find that purpose. I met a very famous American through those lectures in London. You've probably heard of him, a Dr. Benjamin Franklin. Yes, Dr. Benjamin Franklin, we struck up a very strong friendship because we have many things in common. We're both learned men. We both love to learn as much as we can. We love the sciences of all kinds. He also has a Quaker background, as do I. And he was the one who sat me down and convinced me, saying, if you truly want a new start, a new life, you should immigrate to the colonies. We could use your mind, especially if we were talking a lot about government and society and how the world is changing. And he thought, we could use you in the colonies. So, he wrote my letters of sponsorship. Without those sponsor letters, I could not immigrate here, so he actually gave me the ability to come to the colonies. I followed him somewhat. I followed him to the city of Philadelphia, where I landed in 1774. I quickly became a citizen of Pennsylvania, and by 1775, I had an occupation as the editor of the Pennsylvania magazine, not to mention my own writings that have been published up till now. Right now, I got to the colonies just in time for the war to start. So now I'm fully enveloped in that. Currently, I am writing a new pamphlet called The Crisis. And I was charged to write this pamphlet by my friend General Nathaniel Greene and Dr. Benjamin Franklin. See, in the year of 1776, I had already served a year enlistment in the Continental Army. Now, I did not see any fighting. It was a clerical position. I was aide-de-camp to General Nathaniel Greene. But getting to know him, already knowing Benjamin Franklin, they came to me saying, we need to have the people know what these men are fighting for. It's very important. You cannot win a war if you do not have public opinion on your side. These people do not know what these men are going through, what they're fighting for. We have to have something that the people know. So they tasked me with writing a pamphlet based on the experiences that I've seen and that the generals have seen and what the soldiers have seen. It's called The Crisis. Now, the first line of this pamphlet I've already come up with is called These Are the Times That Try Men's Souls. It's very simple, but it's a true observation. These are the times that are trying many men's souls. And not just those that are fighting. Every colonist here, his soul is being tried in some way. A lot of fear. Everywhere. Because we know the horrors of war. We know how long it can last, what it can take from us. War can take everything from us. It has a nasty habit of that. It's been doing that ever since we started fighting. Now, writing this new pamphlet is to let the people know what we are fighting for. To unite everyone through the suffering of what these soldiers have already been doing. And actually gain support, because we know that our Continental Army, they've been fighting for 2 years now. We know that they have been undersupplied and undermanned. And that can only be fixed by gaining and finding the support that we need throughout all the colonies. And many of the people, and many of the colonists in every different colony, still does not know what we fight for. Now, we did declare our independence from Great Britain. I think that's a very clear reason that we are fighting for our own independence, the ability for us to create our own country. And the people need to know that. And they need to know that that's the only way forward, that this war is going to end. It's for us to lose or we gain our independence. It's the only logical way for us to continue. We can no longer stay under the yoke of British tyranny. We cannot do that. The last 10 years have proven that fact. Now, I already wrote a pamphlet to address this fact, to try to get every colonist to realize that the only way this war will end is independence. And that is the only way we can attain what we are trying to build here in the colonies. Because this is my humble opinion, but I believe that the laws that we're passing here in the colonies is allowing man to become what the Almighty always wanted man to be. But we cannot do that under the yoke of British tyranny. Now that is where my first pamphlet comes in, Common Sense. Common Sense, you should be able to find it. Pick it up if you have not read it. Read it. I wrote it for every colonist to be able to understand and read it. If they're illiterate, it can be read to them, and they can understand it. And that is what it discusses. It discusses that the only logical end of this war is complete separation from the British monarchy and Parliament. And we here have the ability to create a new government and a new country for ourselves that gets us away from the tyranny of Great Britain. Now, I'm not going to sit here and read this entire pamphlet to you. You can do that on yourselves. I don't want some people to fall asleep. But I do have 4 main arguments that what I say the only way forward is independence. The first argument in Common Sense is that the original design of government, I argue that the British Parliament and the King are no longer a valid form of government based on the idea of government itself. I am going to read one little excerpt for you. Just a little small, not a long one. But it is stating why we have government in the first place, why mankind created government. So, excuse me 1 minute, I'll read this one little. Society in every state is a blessing, but government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil. In its worst state, an intolerable one, for when we suffer or are exposed to the same miseries by a government, which we might expect in a country without government, our calamity is heightened by reflecting that we furnish the means by which we suffer. Government, like dress, is a badge of lost innocence. For were the impulses of conscience clear, uniform, and irresistibly obeyed, man would need no other lawgiver. But that not being the case, he finds it necessary to surrender a part of his property to furnish means for the protection of the rest. Now, what I'm saying there is that our ability as humans, as mankind, to come together and create our societies, our towns, our cities, our states, that is an inherent ability given to us by the Almighty. We will always have that ability. We will always come together to form societies. It's just innate to us. But we do not live in a perfect world where that society is protected. If we lived in a perfect world, we would not need a government to protect us. We would not need protection from any kind. But we do not live in that world. We live in a world where there's sickness, disease, disasters, storms, war, men out there just trying to take advantage of us. So we need protection. So mankind creates government to protect the society under it. Now, since we created that government to protect our society, if that government no longer protects that society, it is our right to get rid of that government and create a new government that protects that society. Now, how does that deal with the events that are happening here in the colonies? The last 10 years have proven that the British government is no longer a valid form of government because they are not protecting the society that we have here in the colonies. They are taking advantage of it. And now they are attacking and fighting a war with us. I don't believe that's any form of protection. But it started with the taxes. It started with the blockades, the stifling of commerce. It started there over a decade ago. And now this is leads to war. This government clearly can no longer be our government to protect our society because they are threatening our society. And that is my main point, that's my first main point in common sense, is that the actions committed by Parliament and the King shows that they are not a valid form of government. And it's by our right to create a new government to protect the society. I later go on, and this is more of a worldwide view, about the waning power of monarchy in general. As I said, the world is changing. It is no longer the world where the king owns all the wealth and he has his serfs. And the serfs throw his food to the king and he protects everyone. We don't live in that world anymore. We live in a world of, like I said, a growing merchant class, where men who are not blessed by birth, by some sort of nobility or title, but these men can still create a product or a service and make something of themselves and end up owning land in the first place. So more and more land is being bought by these rich merchant classes. So the power of government is waning. Another problem with monarchy in general is heretical succession. Heretical succession, the king has a son, the crown goes to the son. But as history has proven many, many times before, this is not the gamble that we need in our society today. Why should we spend a generation under a good king for the next generation to spend their lives under an idiot? It just happened many times before. Why? Why should we take that gamble? Again, society and civilization is changing to where we don't need that gamble. And it also goes further into the class system that monarchy provides, because it does divide it into the people that have no title, no land, no nobility, the people that have their titles, their land, and their nobility. It divides into a class system. And then you end up with cases, as I said, in Grand Town, where you have clearly a town that is not being taken care of or protected by that said government, because they are only interested in protecting that higher class themselves, the perpetuation of their nobility and their title and their line, not about the people that live around them and work for them, feed them. That is no longer, that goes to the wayside. Later it goes on to the thoughts of the present state of American affairs, and that is where I go into the unfair taxes, tyranny, the closing. Ever since the French and Indian War, I go through what has happened here in the colonies in this last decade that has shown that this government is no longer caring for our society and how we live here. They are more interested in keeping their society all the way across the ocean afloat. And last is the ability of the Americans, the colonists here, that we have the ability to create this new world, this new country. And we've proven it. Many colonists come to me and are like, how can we govern ourselves? How can we lead ourselves without the king? Without Parliament, we do not know how to govern ourselves. And I push back with them. I was like, for a long time, friends, you have your local governments in every colony. You've had, in Virginia, had the House of Burgess shortly after Virginia was established. The House of Burgess was a group of landowning men that came together that passed rules and regulations for the betterment of the colony. That is self-governance, my friend. And that blueprint of the House of Burgess spread to every other colony. Every colony has been self-governing themselves for decades now, without any interference from Parliament, without any interference from the king. They let us govern ourselves. And it's only become a problem in the last decade, when their coffers are empty from a war that they started with the French, as they do many times before. We have the ability to create a new life, a new country, a new government that the people of this world have not seen. And we shall not shy away from it. We should not let the fear take us, believing that we are not strong enough to create a new life here. You are strong enough. And that comes from a man who's had to start his life over 2 or 3 times. If I could do it, I'm pretty sure most of the people here, the hardworking people I've seen here in my short amount of time living here, can do the same. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope I did not bore most of you today. I am not more of an orator, I'm more of a writer, so thank you for being here today. Be on the lookout for the crisis. I should be done with it by the end of the year. The beginning of this year, I came out with Common Sense. Pick up a copy if you see it. It should be in any book entitled Business as you find. So thank you so much for being here today. Thank you.